everyone. Thank you so much for coming out. This is our second pre-show event for Heathers the Musical here at Oglethorpe University, which is a co-production with Actors Express Theater. And for those of you who might be unfamiliar with the story of Heathers, well, first I'll introduce myself. I'm Natalie Holly-Perviance. I'm the development director at Actors Express Theater. And today we have Precious West, who's a choreographer for Heathers, and we have Alli Lingenfelter, who is our music director. But before we go and start asking you some questions about your experience with this show, I just wanted to give you a little bit of background about what is Heathers in case you're unfamiliar. So Heathers the Musical is based on the 1989 film, that starred Winona Ryder, Christian Slater, Shannon Doherty, and it's an American black comedy that portrays 4 teenage girls, 3 of whom are named Heather, in a clique at an Ohio high school when one of them becomes enamored by a new student who was intent on murdering the popular students and staging their deaths as suicides. It's often described as a dark, cynical, subversive film that inspired today's rock musical of the same name. And it has been produced in New York and LA, London's West End, Brazil, and it has been requested by many, many high schools all over the country for licensing rights so that they might produce the musical. So we're just gonna take it back a little bit, and this question is for both Precious and Alli. How familiar were you, first of all, with the film, and what were your first impressions about it? So I'll start with Precious.
The first time I watched Heathers, I was 16, and I was obsessed with it. I don't even really think I truly understood everything that was going on in the film, but I just knew that I liked it at a young age. And I don't really think that a lot of the material really clicked until I got older, and this is, at this point, me watching the movie for like the 5th time. So yeah, I was a big Heathers fan, and then once I heard the musical, when it first came out, I didn't really connect that it was based off of the film. But yeah, it was, I loved the musical.
Oh, you didn't realize? Oh, okay.
It just didn't click. All I knew is that like all of my my friends was obsessed with it. They're like, oh, Heathers, the musical, it's so great, listen to it. But I never did. I just kept hearing about this awesome, musical. And then once I finally listened to it, I was like, this is kind of cool. So yeah.
This is familiar.
Yeah, it makes sense now.
When did you figure it out?
I didn't figure it. I didn't figure it out until after I listened to the entire soundtrack. Like I just didn't connect the dots because I haven't seen the movie at that point for like a very long time. So yeah, it was a very this makes sense.
And what about you, Alli?
Let me scoot my mic a little closer. Sorry, I scooted my chair back. I was born sometime in the 80s. So I'm going to stay around that. And Heathers was actually, I wasn't allowed to watch it at home. But we're not. I had very strict parents growing up. No MTV, no VH1, no, which I needed to know what it was all about, so I would try to sneak it at other people's houses, like, a 10-year-old does. But I went to a slumber party, and we watched Dirty Dancing and Heathers, and I was like 10. I wasn't allowed to watch either of those movies at home, so I didn't tell my parents, but I'm kind of like Precious. The first time I saw it, I was like, this is amazing, but it didn't click with me how dark it was. And I took a lot of the parts really seriously because I was too young to understand satire and how to pick up on dark humor, right? So it took until I watched it again in, high school, and I liked it. It was fine. It wasn't ever like a cult following for me. But it was a movie that I was familiar with. And I was so familiar with it that I didn't listen to the music from the musical because I was like, ugh, another musical that's been adapted from a movie. This is, it's like when you read a book and you love it and you don't want to watch the film because you are attached to the book. I wasn't super attached to Heathers but I was attached enough to where I was like this is gonna be another one and done. Like Beetlejuice, which I'm not a huge fan of Beetlejuice, the musical, because I love the movie. But finally, I had to play the song 17, which is the big Act 2 duet that y'all hear. It's beautiful, at a cabaret. And I fell in love with it immediately. And I was like, all right, I'm going to listen. And then I fell in love with the whole musical. Then they readapted it for the West End version and added some new songs. And those new songs, especially one called I Say No in Act 2, it's really Veronica's, it's a big moment of her making a huge decision that's going to shift the plot.
I felt that watching.
And it is one of the best songs in the show. And it wasn't even in the original. So when I heard the West End recording from London, that's when I really fell in love with it. So when Freddie and Seamus, the technical director for Actors Express, asked if I wanted to do it, I texted back immediately. And I jumped up and down at home because I was really excited.
Oh, okay. Okay, so you both are very accomplished working in the theater here in Atlanta. Precious, fun fact, was doing development work for Actors Express right before I came on board. But you're an artist, you're a multi-hyphenate artist, you're an actor, you're a dancer, you're a singer. Can you sort of just walk us through your background, like what, and then how did you come on board as part of the creative team here for Heathers?
Well, it all started when I was 4 years old, and my mom took me to see Annie on Broadway, and I was convinced I was Annie in the audience. Very funny, I never did theater in high school. We didn't have a drama club or anything like that in my high school. I just knew that I liked to dance because I've always danced, and I sang in my church. And I just decided that I was going to audition for theater in college. I went to Brunel University. I was a part of the Gainesville Theater Alliance. And I auditioned for my first musical, Hairspray. Had no idea what I was doing. I could sing, I could sight read because I know how to play piano, and I played the clarinet growing up. And so I didn't have any sheet music. They said, all right, Precious, what you got? And I was like, I can sing a cappella, Who's Loving You by Michael Jackson. It worked because I got in my first show. But ever since then, it's like my love for theater just grew immensely. When I was a junior, I started choreographing. I choreographed for the Gainesville Ballet Theater, and then I became a dance teacher. I taught dance for about 5 years. And obviously I'm still doing theater at this point. And then when I graduated from Brunel, a year and a half later, I auditioned for the Actors Express intern company. And I got into that, and so that was really cool because it allowed me to like mentor the different directors and choreographers and also still be in the show. And I've loved it. I've choreographed lots of high school musicals since then, so if anybody has a niece or a daughter or a nephew around the metropolitan area, I'm sure I've choreographed them at their high school. So yes, lots of children's theater companies, but this is my first choreographed gig for an Atlanta regional production, so I'm super excited and honored to be able to produce this.
And it's so good, y'all. Wait till you see the choreography. Like, it's gonna blow you away. It looks like you've been doing it for a million years. So that's a
Thank you.
But Alli, you're no stranger either. I mean, you've worked at Simplicity. You've done many shows with Actors Express. Can you also walk us through your background and how you became part of the creative team here?
Sure. Growing up, I always thought that music was a hobby, like that you couldn't really like make a living from music, right? And so I actually went to college. I started out as an aerospace engineering major in college because I liked math and I liked physics. And a couple years in, and I had just played piano just because I loved it every day and taught myself songs and stuff once I got to college. But one day I was sitting in an engineering ethics class and I was like, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to like know I'm gonna make money but do something I have zero passion for. So I left in the middle of class and I walked across campus to the music department.
So dramatic.
I know, it's like meant for a movie or something, but it was all really serendipitous because when I walked in the music building, I heard piano music and there was an office door open, and I walked in and I was like, hey, I'm trying to get some information about switching my major. And he was like, to what? And I was like, piano, I think, I don't know, you know. He was like, play me something. So I played a couple of classical pieces that I had memorized. And he was like, well, that was your audition, you're in. Let's get your classes changed. And he was the head of the piano department.
Oh, wow.
So I didn't have to go through the formal audition process. And then the very next day, I was in music classes instead of all of my physics and engineering classes. So I ended up graduating with a piano performance degree, and then I got my master's in music history. But all the while, my true love was playing musical theater, and I feel like my piano skills, my sight reading skills, teaching skills, and just my understanding of music came from having to think on my feet during the teaching process of a musical. And so that had always kind of been on the side, and life threw some curveballs at me, and I decided I was going to move to Atlanta and take a break from teaching music and just try to music direct. And a friend called me the day I moved in and said, hey, my friend got a job and he's leaving to go to Virginia. He's the music director at this theater called Actors Express. We need a replacement for the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Can you come in tomorrow to the 10 out of 12? And I was like, okay. So I walked into the 10 out of 12 the day after I moved to Atlanta for the Rocky Horror Picture Show in 2014. Wow. Freddie didn't even know that the music director had left. He saw me and was like, who are you? And I was like, oh, hey, sorry, I'm here to... And I met the drummer, bass player, and guitarist for this show, and almost all of my shows now at the Rocky Horror Picture Show, the previous music director had arranged that band. And so I sight read through the show with them and took over from there, and had such a good time that Freddie asked me to do Rent the next summer, and then asked me to do, I don't know, after Rent was like Sweeney Todd, and then Company, and Falsettos, and Fun Home, like almost like a lot of the musicals. So that was my introduction to Actors Express. It was all very random, but like the best thing that could have happened to me, because Freddie Ashley has turned into one of my favorite people and closest friends, and he's a huge mentor for me. So that was kind of my introduction to Atlanta theater, and then there aren't a ton of music directors in town, and so I started getting calls. I got to work at Drama Tech with their department. I did a couple shows at Horizon, got to work at Synchronicity. I get to go to Stone Mountain every Christmas and teach the carolers for a little bit. So, but yeah, Actors Express was like my deep dive into Atlanta theater and kind of how people started to get to know me once I got here.
That's cool.
It's like the weirdest story ever. I know.
So, like, even that story could be made into a
I know. So dramatic. Yeah,
So,
I didn't know you didn't do theater in high school.
Nope, I was just
No idea.
dramatic as heck growing up.
So, Precious, I'm going to borrow from the old adage for actors, which is an actor prepares. Can you walk us through how a choreographer prepares? Maybe just share a little bit about what your creative process is, specifically for this show.
Yeah, so I'm a feel it type of person. Like, before I'm preparing to choreograph a show, I have to play the music full blast in my house, and I just keep doing it until something literally pops in my head. And it could be something as simple as I'm driving and all of a sudden So there's this one dance move that I emulated it off of the car dealerships. You guys know those little blow up things that just like goes around. And I was driving and I was like, oh, that would be kind of funny to put into the choreography. And so if you guys pay attention and Never Shut Up Again, at the very end, they go up and down. So I literally take like everything that I see and I figure out ways to kind of like create it into a dance move. That, listening to the music full blast, and then also I kind of like to take inspiration from the genre and from the time period of when the show is happening. So I listen to a lot of Janet Jackson, Madonna, watch some of their videos, just so I can kind of like live in the moment.
And Freddie Ashley is a huge Madonna fan.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. He is obsessed. So I think Precious.
That's our artistic director at Actors Express.
I think Precious did good by putting so much Madonna in the
Yeah,
show. It's
he was like,
awesome.
oh, that's the one dance move from her on the Run concert back in the 90s that I went to when I was 25. I'm like,
And he'll pull up
wow.
the YouTube video and he's like, this is what I'm talking about. And Precious is like, oh, okay, cool. And he knows like pinpointed from his like 6th Madonna concert. This is the move that she did and I screamed and now you're putting it in the show.
Now, of course, I did not look at all of Madonna's like videos and such.
No, you're inspired
Yeah.
by the music of the time. Like, was there a certain, I guess, feeling that you were going for? Like, is there something, a sense, like, how were you wanting the actors, the dancers to move in this space? Like, what was
Well, I try very clearly before I'm choreographing any number to let them know exactly where I feel we should be going vibe-wise on the music. So don't want to spoil anything, but the big JD scene that he does, I explained, well, this is what I'm envisioning when I'm hearing this. And so when we're doing these certain moves, this is what I'm hoping to see. And then I allow them to have the creative expression to kind of help merge my ideas. So a lot of the choreography, I like to also give a round of applause to the cast because they really helped bring the vision alive. It wasn't just all me.
So there's actually a little bit of direction then.
Yeah.
Do you see yourself directing down the line?
You know, why not? I like to say yes to everything. I think everything is a challenge and every day is you learn something new, so.
Alli, can you explain exactly what a music director does on a musical for people who are completely unfamiliar? Like, what does that look like? Where are you during the show? Who are you working with? Who are sort of like the people that have to be right beside you for you to be most effective at your job?
It's actually kind of a giant process that I think a lot of people don't realize quite how much goes into it. So once I get hired for a show, I start to listen to it. I actually don't listen to it backwards and forwards because I know that Freddie and I, or whoever the director is, we want to leave some room for interpretation open, and I don't want to be married to the soundtrack. I don't want people to come and hear a carbon copy of the Broadway version or the West End version. So I listen a bit to kind of figure out what I'm looking for singing-wise from an actor. And then when we get closer to auditions, I go through the whole score and I pick out cuts of music, of songs for each character that'll showcase, hey, she has to belt really high in this song. Can this actor do it? Well, let's ask him to do it for the audition. And this process was a Zoom audition, so they were, the callbacks were Zoom, the auditions were filmed. And so we kind of throw really challenging musical cuts at them, and then we comb through the videos, or in the room, we comb through the live auditions and kind of figure out moving puzzle pieces around. Freddie and I and Precious and the casting directors usually are there to help, kind of putting puzzle pieces together. We want to make sure that the leads can do the work that it requires and can hit the notes. We want to make sure we build a good ensemble, and then once the show is cast, I come in and I teach the actors all the music from the show. And it usually has to be done in the first 2 or 3 days of rehearsal because we have to do a read-through, sing-through the 3rd or 4th day of rehearsal. So my first 3 days is real heavy music, part chord teaching, giving everybody, coming up with schedules to get all of the music done. And then I kind of turn into the rehearsal accompanist in the room, and I play all of the music for all of the rehearsals. And then we move into tech after 3 or 4 weeks of rehearsal, and I move backstage and I have the band with me, and so I play piano for the show and I conduct my 6 other musicians, mainly with head nods and breaths and stuff because I'm playing. So I actually perform all the shows and I put the band together that I know can play whatever genre we're doing, rock, pop, classical, whatever. So I put a good band together that knows how to work with me and follow me, and then I just get to play the show every day.
So I know, so you're there every show, backstage with your band?
Every show, yeah, and I'm at every rehearsal as well. So once I come in, I'm kind of Freddie's right-hand man, making sure that I understand how all the underscores work, where we want the pauses, what dramatic effect is going on, and how my piano playing can kind of intuitively drive the plot. So I'm there from day one. I don't miss a rehearsal, and I play for every rehearsal, and then I perform the shows as well with the band.
And I know in the past you might have had to rewrite some songs or change some tempos or keys and that sort of thing. Did you have to do that for this show at all?
Not really, and it's not like rewriting, it's more of rearranging if I need to repeat an underscore because I know there's a huge scene change, or if there's a really complex rhythmic section and we need to add 2 beats because it's easier for the actor to know where the next one is. Like, we'll throw in a couple of beats here and there. We'll cut underscores or scene shifts if we don't need them because we don't have a ton of scene shifting in this show. So I just kind of interpret the music to fit what Freddie has directed to be happening on stage.
Well, and I also would like to point out that I feel like Alli and I worked really well together in a way that I don't think typically happens as often, because I know the musical off the back of my hand. I often go to her and I say, hey, in this song, there's like a trombone noise. Are we gonna have a trombone? Then she'll be like, yeah, we're gonna have a trombone. I'm like, okay, great. I'm gonna put a dance move with that sound. Can you play exactly what that is? And so we do a lot of like mixing and matching of the rest of the band. And so what's really cool is that once we have the sits probe and all of the actors get to like sing, then they hear those instruments and they're like, that's what you were talking about, Precious. And I'm like, yes. So when I do this, that's with the trombone. So that's like really cool.
It does sound a lot different and I tell the actors in the room all the time, I'm like, it'll be way easier with the drums. I promise. It'll be because they're like freaking out about not hearing something, or they can't quite stay on tempo because it's just me and I can only, I play from like the master score, so I have everybody's notes all put into like a piano part. So I can give them what they're gonna hear, but it's just on a piano. So the sits probe is where the actors get to sing along with the band for the first time. It's an old school German orchestral vocabulary word. It's called sits probe, S-I-T-Z-P-R-O-B-E. And it's basically a sing through. So it's always a really exciting time for the actors. They get really hyped up because they get to, we've been telling them for weeks, just wait till you hear the rest of the band. It'll make so much more sense.
I'm not gonna be your drummer.
Yeah, and then, cause I'll like clap my hands. I'm like, okay, this is drums. This is me in the rehearsal. I am the drums. And it's fine, it's adequate, but it's really great when they get to hear a little bit of everybody, so, yeah.
So I'm going to take a little bit of a shift here. This is more about the content of the musical. So I know that initially this was controversial for its subject matter, which remains today. The film and now the musical have had a cult following that continues to grow. What is it about this story that seems to resonate so deeply with audiences, including the cast, many of whom weren't even born yet, when the film was released? And just for a quick review, yes, it's described as very high energy, but it's also considered a Black comedy. It opens conversations on dark issues like bullying, teen suicide, sexual assault, school violence. But all of that aside, it still had this cult following. It still remains popular, the film and the musical. So what about that? What do you think resonates with you, or even some of the cast members?
Well, it's true. Like it happens. I think a lot of the kids nowadays and people in the cast can all relate to someone in the show, whether they know somebody that was Martha or they were a Heather in school. I for sure got bullied in high school. And so it was all very familiar, which I think that's why it was so easy for me to choreograph, because I can honestly relate to every single character. Like, I knew someone that died when I was in high school from gun violence. I was bullied when I was in high school, obviously because I wasn't the bigger girl out of the friend group, but I actually got bullied in high school because I was the smallest girl. People used to make fun of me and call me like Twig and all crazy names because that's what high schoolers do. And so it's really easy for me to empathize and sympathize with the characters and the castmates, because a lot of them all have dealt with just about every single type of theme in this show. And I think as an audience member, it will be very nostalgic because you can also feel what they went through, and whether you went through it or not, know someone that did.
I think some of the deeper, more dark matter in content of the show is really difficult for people to just bring up in their day-to-day life. It's really, they're either ashamed or embarrassed or want to pretend like it's not happening. So this show, in a really satirical way, I mean, it pokes fun at a lot of dark content, but it also, like, opens the door for awareness and conversation starting. You know, it's like, there are trigger warnings in this show. There are some really triggering moments, but it's also, it allows the creative team and the cast to really kind of have a doorway to open, to have conversations about these really hard things. It's like it's shining a spotlight on these things in a sometimes funny way that kind of makes it okay to then take it to a more serious place.
Do you think that lessens, I guess, the initial sting of it, having it set to musical, having dance numbers? Do you think that some of the way you're packaging now, the conversation to be had, do you think that the way we're serving it, the way we're presenting it, helps to do that?
I think it's more accessible in a lot of ways, that it shines a spotlight on some of these darker issues that a lot of people in their day-to-day life pretend like doesn't exist because it's too hard.
Yeah.
So you come to enjoy a night of music, and there's so much enjoyable content in this show, but there are also some really deep moments, and I feel like it shines a light and kind of opens the door for it to be okay to talk about these things. And in rehearsals, we constantly had mental health check-ins and checking to make sure people were good and how are you feeling about these things. And we set a lot of community intentions in the room for everyone to really be respectful and understand that if you're triggered, let us know. If this is hard for you and you need to step out for a minute, do what you need to do to take care of yourself. So we really, you know, throughout all of the fun, and there's lots of laughs in the show, so I don't want to downplay that. It is a really good time, and there's so much redemption in this story, but I feel like it just shines a light on these issues in an exaggerated way. And it lets us talk about it, you know? Oh gosh, shines a light. I'm sorry, there's a song in the show called Shine a Light, and I did not mean to do that. It's so funny. I was like, why are you laughing at me?
Well, art allows us to have those tough conversations. It serves as a liaison.
Right.
So yeah.
Thank you. That's what I was trying to say this whole time. Leave it to Precious.
No, but as artists, you know, as a musician, as a dancer, as an actor, however, I mean, the way you use your art, the way you're engaging in your art, this is, I mean, you're doing a job right now, but it's still very personal, all right? Your art is very personal. Are you finding, how are you navigating, or how do I phrase this? How are you walking that fine line between your work, the work aspect of it, and the personal side of it? Are you able to walk away from, how are you able to do this every night and walk out of it, get out of that zone and go and, you know, be with your families and do the things, the chores and the things that you were expected to do in your day-to-day lives that have nothing to do with this world? How are you leaving this on the stage or backstage?
It's, for me, from a lot of years of experience of being able to, once I play the last note, put aside the mistakes or the weird things or the sound hiccups or the missed entrances or the whatever, put that stuff aside because I'm really hard on myself in that way. But also to put up a wall between me and the beautiful music I get to play for the really sincere or tender or intense moments. Because if I let myself feel it too heavily, I can't continue to play adequate notes. Like I can't play the show well if I feel it too much in the moment. So it's taken me a lot of years to be able to turn the piano off, get in my car. I always tend to ride home in silence because I have big, you know, headphones on and it's really loud, and just kind of know that it's time to put this aside until tomorrow. But there have been times and days where I've gotten in the car and just wanted to like sob because it's just so, you're just so immersed and you just live in this world for so many hours a day for several weeks, and then performing shows hoping to make a difference in other people's lives. It's really hard to just be able to cut it off. It takes a lot of practice and a little compartmentalization, unfortunately, because if I mean, I could very easily carry it home with me, and it can be really hard sometimes.
Yeah.
And Precious, you're actually in rehearsal for another show.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so I am in Xanadu at Outfront Theater, which is opening later this month, October 27th. And so I am one of the very blessed people in the world to literally turn it off. I've always been like that since I was a child. I don't carry any outside emotions into wherever I'm going in next. So like, for example, if I have a bad day at work, okay, get in the car, what's for dinner? And I literally have like a switch where I can like turn it off and on. And I think it's helped me a lot with choreographing. I know there's been several times when I was choreographing, I'm looking at something and I'm getting so emotional and I cry. And I'm like, guys, I'm just so excited. Like, I'm a very emotional person. And then afterwards, I'm like, all right, bye, have a good day. And I just like go on about my merry way. But I've been doing it since birth. Don't know if it's a good or bad thing. May have to talk to my therapist about it. But so far, it's helped me especially because I'm doing another show. So I literally have to turn off my Heather's brain and turn on my Xanadu brain and then go on about my day.
Do you accidentally throw dance moves from Heather's into Xanadu? I'm just playing.
No. Kind of same time period, but no.
Well, that's true, yeah. Well, so this brings us to our last question. As we are hopefully and very safely moving forward out of this pandemic, what are some of the things that you're hoping for? What's next for you? What are the things you're taking with you as you move on to the next thing? I know you're in Xanadu. Yep.
Me go?
You got
You go, you're next.
After this, the next thing I have is a wedding. I'm getting married at the end of February.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. It's a lot. I got married right out of college, which was a long time ago. And since I've been divorced for a long time as well, but I think I let my mom and dad handle so much of it, and I didn't even realize because I was graduating college and getting married at the same time. And now that I'm like an actual adult trying to plan a wedding, it's kind of taken up all of my time. So I won't do another gig, and I have another gig in March. I'm music directing and playing for a show called The Pretty Pants Bandit at GET, at Georgia Ensemble Theater. It's an original work by my best friend, Jessica DeMaria. She is like an Actors Express darling. She worked there for a long time. She's been in a ton of shows there, and she graduated from Oglethorpe. Now that I'm thinking about it, she
Such a small
right.
world.
But she and her writing partner Chase Peacock wrote a whole musical, and we've workshopped it a ton. And GET picked it up, and it's in their season. So it opens March 31st, I believe. And it's a really cool like feminist folk tale based on true events. So I'm really excited. It's going to be a big 180 from this show. The music style is very, very different from this. So I'll do that. And then who knows? I don't know after that. Yeah.
So I am the world's best wife, and I planned the trip of a lifetime. My husband and I were going to France and Amsterdam during Christmas, so that's my very much needed break that I'm going to be taking. And then after that, I have a couple of choreography gigs that are lined up. I haven't quite signed the dots, but that and then auditioning for some shows to actually be in. But yeah, this whole process has been super humbling, and I feel like I've grown so much as an actor. So even if I don't get into anything within the next year, January, I'm super positive that, you know, the sky is the limit for me.
This is wonderful. This has been so much fun. Thank you so much for just giving us quite an education and how you've become a part of this production and just sharing so much of yourselves. We just really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
And thank you so much for coming to another pre-show event.
Thank you all. You won't see me, but you'll hear me during the show. I'll be heading backstage. Thank you all for coming.
Thanks for coming, guys.